This is going to be a very interesting stream. I'm going to say up front that I don't know much about this topic. So I'm really happy to have Bree Gaudette and Kiki Bartlett here. Both work for an agency called Delivering Hope. And Bree is currently a pregnant surrogate who I met at the YMCA. I take one of the producers swimming a couple times a week. And I saw this lady who was very pregnant. And she also had a very nice daughter that was helping my daughter out. So Bree, if you remember, I said, your daughter is such a good big sister. And you said, she's not a big sister. And I said, well, she will be a big sister. And you said, nope, this isn't mine. And I said, what? What does that mean? I see this thing on you. You are pregnant, having a baby. And you're like, I'm a surrogate. And I had never talked to anybody who had done surrogacy before. So I asked you a couple questions and I said, do you by any chance do interviews? And you're saying, why do you ask? And well, because that's what I do for a living. So let's get together and talk about this. So thank you both for doing this. The thing I wanted to, I guess, start with is just kind of give people a basic primer on this, because as I posted on my locals community, which is not scrolling for me right now. Hang on a second. Let me present the different part of the screen. I put this article up for people. And again, if you want to go support my work, go check out AllisonMorrow.locals.com. And you can put in questions ahead of time for interviews for people like Kiki and Bree. But this article from The Guardian is called All Surrogacy is Exploitation. The World Should Follow Sweden's Ban, because Sweden and some other countries have banned surrogacy in the name of, I guess, exploiting women and unsafe circumstances for children. And I had no idea. I had no idea there was such controversy over this topic. I've read headlines that say it pits feminists against progressives and pits freedom against protecting families and kids. And it was just, wow. When I started looking at it, I was surprised by that. And so I think maybe the best place to start, as we were talking about before we went live, is what is surrogacy? Can you define it? Is it something that you can define, or are there just so many different kinds of surrogacy? It would take forever to do it. But could we just start there, and who would like to go first?
I guess I can go first.
Okay.
The basic, most common type of surrogacy that we see today is where there's no genetic connection to the surrogate mother. The egg and the sperm come either from donors or from the parents themselves. So there's no genetic crossover at all. So they basically fertilize the egg at the lab and turn it into an embryo, and then run some tests, and then they'll implant that into the uterus and start the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. And what is most common? People who have an embryo that is, it's like the mom and dad, and they can't have the baby because the mom's, for one reason or another, incapable of carrying it, but they just need a uterus, or it's, I mean, who are your customers, I guess?
So usually it's really a broad range of people. We can find what's called a traditional couple, where you have a mother and a father who are what's called intended parents, and the mother, for one reason or another, cannot carry the pregnancy due to either age or a health reason. Some of these women have gone through the process and have gotten pregnant and risked their lives either in pregnancy or delivery of the baby. And then there's single parents, that it's like a single mother or a single father who just hasn't found someone in life to be a partner with, and they just really want to be a parent. And so they'll do either like an egg donor or a sperm donor to achieve that. And then sometimes there are same-sex couples, especially from other countries, and that's just due to bans that are in other countries against surrogacy. And so they come to the United States and kind of do that here with a surrogate in the US instead of in their country, because it's illegal.
And the United States has different laws depending on the state, right?
Yes. Yeah, Washington State just in 2019 made it legal to do surrogacy for compensation, and it's interpreted you can do about 2 or 3 pregnancies for surrogacy. Different states have different laws regarding how many you can do, if you can do surrogacy, or what's required from the surrogacy. Kiki, do you know any more about that?
Each state is different. There's still some states within the US that don't allow surrogacy. So if a surrogate were to be in that state during their delivery, if they just happen to deliver there early, then that state will not recognize the contract if that state doesn't allow surrogacy. So it just kind of it depends. Here in Idaho, where I'm at, we don't have any laws for surrogacy or against surrogacy. So we're just kind of in a gray area where we're still allowed to do it, but there's no laws regulating it.
What about Washington, where we are, Bree? Do you know?
As far as,
do we have regulation around it?
Yeah, the terminology is pretty loose as far as how many you can do. It's 2, but a lot of people interpret it as 3, so it's really unsure as to how many is allowed. But it's that's I think that's the main restriction on surrogacy. Up until January of 2019, it was you couldn't do it at all for compensation. So if you did it, you could not be paid for your time or your inconveniences or any pain that you experienced during your pregnancy.
Okay, let's go quickly to some of the criticisms that you all may have received about the practice. This article, again, says all surrogacy is exploitation. What do you think about that?
Well, we're not being forced to do this. It's something that we are choosing to do on our own. And the fact that not anybody can be a surrogate, there's quite a rigorous process you have to go through to even qualify, especially with the clinics, the fertility clinics. I don't think it's exactly exploitation, because like I said, it's a choice that we're making. We typically love pregnancy. We have very healthy pregnancies, but we're done having children of our own, and our body is still healthy and capable of carrying a child. And so we are making the choice to basically fulfill that bodily want to have more children, but not actually have more children in our home.
Kiki, would you like to add anything?
Again, what Bree said, nobody's being forced to do this. A lot of the women that come to us have this strong desire to want to help somebody, and this is a huge way of doing that. We're helping build families in a maybe non-traditional way, but it's getting more prevalent, and more people are learning about surrogacy. So it's growing, and that's why laws and regulations are changing, because it's getting more well known. People are looking towards surrogacy to build their family because they want that genetic relation with their child. But maybe for some medical reasons, a lot of the parents have health history that they're not able to carry their own child. This gives them a way to have the genetic relation to their child. The surrogates are not forced at all.
Okay, going back to my locals page again, AllisonMorrow.locals.com, where I take questions ahead of time for interviews. One comment that to this point, so much of this is a matter of degree. Empress 9 says, isn't surrogacy much like babysitting? It's commercial exploitation that makes crimes and horror stories of many of these acts, like organ donation and even sex for sale. Donating mother's milk is fine, but we wouldn't want to see women hooked up to machines for profit, she says. I'm curious what you think. Is there a scale, though? In other words, you're talking best case scenario. Does it ever get exploitative? Does it ever go down a slippery slope like other practices that you may start off, I guess, with the intentions you're talking about, and then, it evolves into something, or devolves, I guess, into something that you wouldn't want to be associated with?
I can answer that.
Please.
I think the screening process that the agencies have, a lot of it is there's regulations that we have to abide by, but we want to make sure that these surrogates are doing it for the right reasons. Of course, the compensation is great. Like, who wouldn't want some money to just for babysitting? There is a term within surrogacy called extreme babysitting, because that's essentially what we're doing. We're the ones carrying the baby, but we're just the oven.
Why do you, you already kind of talked about this, but I want to ask you a couple more questions about why you like doing it. Because like Bree, this is your second or third?
This is my second.
Okay. And you have 2 other kids, right?
Yes. I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Okay. And Kiki, you have kids too?
I have 3 of my
Okay.
own.
And you, okay. And how many have you done the surrogate part of this too?
I've done it twice.
Twice. Okay. Sorry if you already said that. Sorry. As I was talking about motherhood, I get no sleep right now because I have a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old. So if I have to ask you the same question multiple times, please overlook that. Okay. So I guess, was there, I mean, it's obviously not, it's not something that like everybody would say, oh, I would like to do that. So besides I like being pregnant, but I don't want any more kids, what else is attractive to you about it? I mean, you could just go work at a daycare. You know what I mean? So why do this?
Well, working at a daycare is definitely different. You actually have like a child that you're handling, and you're actually handling multiples of them. It's not quite the same as being pregnant. But there are people who do it for financial reasons. Obviously you do get compensated for your time and for your uncomfortableness or pain that you might have to experience. But a lot of people will, use their compensation to pay off debt, or to buy a home, or to set up a savings for their kids. And so that sometimes will draw them in too. They're like, well, if I have easy, comfortable, fairly comfortable pregnancies, and I handle it really well, and my body does not, struggle with being pregnant, then why not help out other family and also get some compensation that can help out my family? But for the most part, we try to screen through the surrogates that we get in and make sure that they're doing it for the right reason. It's not just all the financial, gain.
Kiki, anything else?
Part of the screening process is a home visit and a background check. We want to make sure that these girls are already financially stable, so that they're not dependent on this income that's coming in to be able to keep the roof over their heads. So we want to make sure that they're at a good spot in life, that we're not like interfering with anything. Surrogacy is something that you can do in conjunction with whatever you're already doing. You're just adding in a few more appointments to go to the doctors and adding in the hormones, but the rest of it, you can still keep doing what you're doing every day.
Okay. There was a question over on Rumble about adoption is a thing. When there are so many orphans, surrogacy shouldn't be considered. There are thousands or hundreds of thousands of babies just frozen in labs. I'm guessing they're talking about IVF and embryos there. I want to get your response to that. But first, something you can't drink while you're a surrogate, it's wine. Well, actually, I should say both my MD and my naturopath say you can have a glass of wine. One at dinner is not going to hurt you. So but I'm not going to promote it. I'm not going to promote it. You go talk to your doctor about it. But when you have your whatever, your glass of wine, your twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, which is my other sponsor here, and you're watching this video, leave me a comment and let me know what you think about the products, because actually I've been meaning to ask people, if you've gone to AllisonWinePromo.com or you've gone to TwinEngineCoffee.com/Allison, how is it? One of the best ways to support my work is to support the sponsors, but also tell other people about it, and leave me a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think. As you know, my wines are from Argentina. They're all high altitude, one from almost 9,000 feet. I ski at 4,000 feet. So if you're a grape at 8,000 feet, you know you're working very hard, and you produce an excellent wine. And I can vouch for these myself. The one on the left, the Rogue Malbec, is one of my favorites. It's from a vineyard that hand harvests the grapes. There's a one also here that uses natural fermentation process. These are all smaller, like 200-year-old, in some cases, family operations in very remote regions of Argentina. And the reason that they became a sponsor of mine is because I already said my favorite wines were high altitude Malbecs from Argentina. They happened to see me on a podcast saying that. They reached out to me and said, hey, we have all these amazing high altitude Malbecs. Would you like for us to become a sponsor? And I said, sure, because I already drink that kind of wine. So go check them out, AllisonWinePromo.com. You get 50% off the wine itself and 50% off shipping. You can also go to TwinEngineCoffee.com/Allison. There's a wide variety of roasts. There's also a Caturra tea. I know you're probably also kind of not supposed to drink a whole lot of caffeine. I'm going to be honest with you. I did have a cup of coffee every morning when I was pregnant. Maybe that's why my kids are insane. But if you would like to have some tea, the Caturra tea is much lower caffeine, tastes like a black tea. It's high in antioxidants, made from the fruits around the coffee bean. So go enjoy, support the sponsors, and thanks again for all of your help out there, everybody. Okay, so let's go back to this idea. What do you say to people who say, come on, adopt, don't shop, as they say in the pet world? Adopt, don't shop. There's kids out there that need a home. And what about this topic too of, I mean, I actually have a friend who did IVF. She's got 8 kids, and she can't physically have any more because she had C-sections with every single one. Doctors told her that she can't have any more C-sections. So they don't know what to do, but they believe all those embryos, I think they have 4 left around there, are life. They don't want to just get rid of them. They believe that they're their children. So they're probably going to have to look into surrogacy to bring those kids into the world. I think probably a lot of, I don't know. I would assume that there would be people out there that would understand that, would be far more comfortable with that maybe than some of the other scenarios you described. I have a hard time being against, I guess, my friend finding somebody who could carry her embryos to term. Somebody change my mind if you think that's a terrible thing, but I don't know. I feel like if they want to bring those kids in and she like medically has been told that it's too dangerous for her as a mother to do that, then maybe some people say, well, we shouldn't do IVF at all. I don't know. That's not the rabbit hole we're going down today, I don't think. But what do you think about this topic, y'all? Let's start first with like the adoption question. Do people ever throw that one at you?
All the time. I think the adoption process is highly misunderstood. A lot of people are like, oh, you can just, go down to an agency and basically buy a child. And that's not necessarily the truth. They are a lot harder to get approved through as far as adopting a child versus doing a surrogate for your own child. It's also incredibly expensive as well to adopt a child. And unfortunately, there are a lot of kids that are in, the governmental system who do need to be adopted, but it's a lot harder than most people think when it comes to adopting those children, because you will spend years with them, and then a lot of times they'll take the state will take them and give them back to their parents. So here you've gone raising a child, 3.5 years old, and then the only thing they know is family, and now all of a sudden they're given to their biological parents who might still be working on their life and recovering from whatever situation they were in. So that's a difficult thing to understand, that it's not just easier to adopt. It's actually much more difficult. And then when you adopt a child, you don't know the genetic makeup or the background of the child. So for all you know, one of the parents could have been a severe schizophrenic or have severe health issues, and you put all this investment into a child and you're raising it, and all of a sudden you have a 14-year-old who's, completely different than what they were as a young child when you got them, and you have no clue what's going on because you have no genetic background as to what, their parents had.
Kiki?
A big part of it is just wanting to have a genetic relation. Again, adoption being in a lot of kids out there, but parents that do carry on their lineage or their heritage or their family name, and they feel like having a genetic relation will help them do that. So this is modern medicine allowing parents another way that they can build their family.
Okay, where is there a line, and where is it between what you have described and Bree specifically? You don't know the background. They could have had, some kind of issue mentally, physiologically, or whatever you're going to end up dealing with, for the rest of your life. And it's a problematic situation that, you could avoid if you were in control of the genetic material. Where is the line between that and then like basically just creating babies that fit what you want as a parent? Let me give you an example. There was a story that was going around a while ago about this couple. Was a lesbian couple, and one woman said that she was okay with her wife partner having a kid, but she didn't want her to have a boy. It was supposed to be a girl. And they were supposed to like sift through the embryos to find a girl because she had been abused or something by a guy in the past. She didn't like men. She didn't want to have a son. And the reason this made the headlines is because I guess the embryo agency gave them a boy. And then she was like, well, we're not going to abort the kid. So we have the son. And then the whole article is about this woman being traumatized by her kid. I'll be honest with you. My opinion of that was just, I was disgusted by that. I was disgusted by the fact that there's somebody who thinks they can be a parent and is that selfish. I mean, that's what I walked away. Like you are not ready to be a parent if you're like, I cannot be around a boy kid, or I have to be around a girl kid. And so I get very uncomfortable with this idea of like shopping for a child that you can handle as a parent, because I've found parenting to be a lot of unexpecteds and a lot of challenges. And I don't know. It makes me a little queasy to think of what we can do with modern medicine to craft something that makes us feel comfortable about parenting. So that's something I think that comes up here in this article. I mean, I'll just read this paragraph. Surrogacy may have been surrounded by an aura of Elton Johnish happiness, cute newborns, and notions of the modern family. But behind that is an industry that buys and sells human life, where babies are tailor-made to fit the desires of the world's rich, where a mother is nothing, deprived even of the right to be called mom, and the customer is everything. The West has started outsourcing reproduction to poor nations, just as we outsourced industrial production previously. It is shocking to see how quickly the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child can be completely ignored. No country allows the sale of human beings, yet who cares so long as we are served cute images of famous people and their newborns. So do you have similar concerns or discomforts about like where I guess the end game could go with this? Or is it just, do you, in your opinion, think that's kind of fear baiting and hysteria that's not based in reality?
Kiki, do you have a good answer for that?
I think there is a big misconception on designer babies, because they have the ability to choose what gender they want based on the embryos that are created. They can choose one that doesn't have any genetic disabilities or anything, so they can choose this healthy embryo. And it's not really, I don't like the term designer babies, because they're just choosing a healthy baby to implant into the surrogate or the intended mom. I really just think there's a lot of misconceptions, and there's ways that you can spin it to make it seem horrible, but it's just these incredible options that are available to these parents.
Bree, would you like to say anything?
The amount of money that it does take to have a child via your surrogacy, most parents don't pick and choose like that. When you're talking about the couple that had the son and they didn't want a son, traditional IVF it does not cost as much as surrogate. So a lot of these parents are just happy to have a kid in general. They're not gonna be like, oh, I'm so upset that I only have this gender of embryo, or I'm gonna be mad that you put this one in instead of that one. A lot of times they just want a healthy, happy child like anybody else does, you know. But along with that comes they're paying extra that most people don't have to pay when it comes to have a child. And so they do want to make sure that it is going to be healthy. And so if they have, let's say, a boy embryo who has a better rating as far as like a grade for the quality of life or the likelihood it's going to, you know, turn into an actual living, breathing human being and not have any, you know, medical issues versus a girl that has a lower grade rating and might have a less of a chance of becoming a human, they might choose that boy, but only because it has a better rating of an embryo, like a quality of life, I guess. So in that case, they're not picking a gender, they're just picking what's going to be healthy.
Okay, one question over from the live stream right now on locals is surrogacy is not cheap, as you mentioned. Fully understood and respected. Do newborns' parents insist on specific diet or even avoiding specific foods? Like, what are the rules, I guess, around what you can or cannot do as a surrogate while pregnant?
Most of the time it's just follow your OB recommendations. Some parents who follow specific lifestyles might want to match with a surrogate who does a similar thing. So if they eat only organic food, they might want a surrogate to only eat organic food. Or if the intended parents are like vegan, they might request a surrogate who's a vegan. But for the most part, it's pretty much just, you know, following your OB recommendations in typical pregnancy.
Brisbane makes an interesting point. Are we going to stop organ transplants because there's a black market for them? There's always going to be a dark side to things. Okay, one other question. Are either Bree or Kiki on the boards of these screening agencies or just participants? I mean, you are participants and you're working for the agencies too, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. And both ladies have husbands who are okay with this. Dawn's wife wants to.
Yes.
Curious. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. My husband actually, he has no problem at all with it. And he actually jokes around a lot. So if we're out in public and people will talk to him about like, oh, you have a beautiful family and you got more on the way, he'll be like, yeah, but that baby's not mine and I'm okay with it. And they're just like, oh my gosh. And then he's like, oh, she's a surrogate. And they're like, so he likes to have a sense of humor with it. And he actually establishes relationships with the parents too. We still keep in contact with our first intended parents, and that's been about 2.5 years. And yeah, so they communicate with him and he talks with them and builds relationships with them too. So it's like we're family. It's like merging two families together. It's beautiful.
You've brought up the cost a couple times. Can I ask what if I wanted to go get a surrogate, what I'm looking at? What's the price range for paying?
It honestly depends on where your surrogate is located. Cost of living is a big thing because if you are losing any work or you live in an area where cost of living is higher, typically your compensation's higher, such as California. A lot of surrogates in California have a higher compensation, so it's a lot more expensive to get a California surrogate. I think typically the average compensation is between $45,000 and $55,000 for the surrogate, but if you go through an agency, there are agency fees. Sometimes there might be costs for insurance to cover you know, prenatal appointments, hospital delivery, and stuff like that. So, Kiki, do you have an estimate on the ballpark nowadays for what it is?
Anywhere from 130 to 200,000. It just kind of depends on where the surrogate is located, how much medical expenses are needed, if there's any complications. There's legal fees that can be big, and just depending on the state, it will vary. Like here in Idaho, we have no laws for or against surrogacy. So the name of the surrogate is put on the birth certificate, and then you go to court afterwards to have your name taken off and allow the birth parents to be put on. So there's legal fees after the birth. So really, it's just a huge range, but at least 130,000 with everything.
Wow. And that's cash? Or do people take out loans?
A lot of these parents are like taking out second mortgages and borrowing money and getting out loans to be able to afford this, just because they really want to build this family. It's not, I mean, yes, there are celebrities that have had surrogates and they have thousands of money to just throw at this, but most of these parents are just scraping by and have saved for years in order to be able to do this.
And okay, when it comes to what you're talking about, it depends on, where you live and cost of living and all that stuff. Why would anybody then get a surrogate in California if it costs that much more? I mean, is there a reason you would go to California?
Some people like to have a surrogate who's close to them, just for easeability. Like when the mother goes into, or the surrogate mother goes into labor, it's quicker and easier to get there, or for that relationship. So it really depends on that, and then the laws too. So like Washington is pretty easy. We don't have to go to court after we give birth. It's all handled, that there's paperwork that's just filled out and the parents are put on the birth certificate. There's no having to go to court. So some states are easier to get your parentage after the baby's born. And so some people will be like, oh, there's a lot of difficulties with Texas, so I don't want to have a surrogate in Texas. Or I want somebody, that's, within so much travel time or distance from me, so I can have that relationship and go to appointments and experience, the pregnancy with a surrogate.
Mm-hmm. Question about medical insurance. Do the parents get the surrogate on their insurance plan? How does that work? Medical insurance. What if, you don't have a job? What if you don't have medical insurance? Do you have to have that? Is that a requirement?
You don't have to have insurance. It's preferred by a lot of the intended parents because it does save them, costs. But for instance, I do have health insurance through my husband's work, and surrogacy is not covered on there. So the intended parents are paying a monthly premium for a surrogate-friendly insurance for myself. It's not on their work, and it's not through their employer. It's through the state of Washington. And so that is an extra cost, but it just depends on the circumstances. A lot of parents do prefer that it is covered with their surrogacy, though.
How does the doctor's office know that it's surrogacy, or how does the insurance know it's surrogacy? I mean, you just walk in and you're pregnant. Why do they, I mean, honestly, like, you like it or don't like the practice, like, why did they get to know that you're a surrogate? How does that, I mean, I could have been a surrogate my last pregnancy and they never would have known.
That is true. You don't, I mean, technically you wouldn't have to tell them that you're a surrogate, but we're all so proud of being surrogates and what we get to do for these other families that we pretty much tell anyone and everyone when we get the chance that that we're surrogates. So we have no problem telling. And also a lot of the times we'll sign like a release of information so that way the parents can handle any billing that needs to be done, or if they have questions regarding the pregnancy, they can contact our providers and get that information, more in depth or in detail. And so, yeah, it's pretty common for them to know about it. As far as insurance, do you know, Kiki?
A big part of it is some doctors' offices don't like you to utilize your cell phone while you're at these appointments. And a lot of the times the parents like updates, and sometimes you can have them on the phone or video call so that they can be a part of this pregnancy and be able to ask the doctor questions in real time versus calling or messaging later. It's just keeping them included. That is why the doctor's office is usually notified, just so that they're aware that there's another party that might be calling and we're allowing them access.
Well, I guess too, if it's like, like with my kids, my husband's B positive. I'm the universal donor, O negative. So anyway, I had to get the ROGAM shot, which maybe some people think is unnecessary. But anyway, but they would, I guess maybe a doctor would want to know if it's if it's like genetic, because they ask you, okay, your husband's blood type is what? Your blood type, and then you're like, well, this isn't my husband's baby. This isn't even my baby. This is, okay. And let me ask you about this too, because Bree, I thought you did say that you wouldn't want to do the egg donor thing, that you see surrogacy as different than egg donation, but maybe I misunderstood or misheard you. Could you guys talk a little bit about the differences and, what you think about that versus what you do? Are you comfortable with that? Would you do that? You're obviously very comfortable being a surrogate, but what do you think about that?
As far as egg donation goes, it is actually a lot more difficult to become an egg donor because you have your genetic makeup. So they do a lot more screening and just making sure that like genetically you're going to pass along healthy eggs. And for me, it was always the mindset of like, well, I wouldn't want my child out there in the world. Like who knows what they look like, or who knows what they're doing, or anything like that, which I do know that you can do open egg adoptions, but there's also an age cutoff for egg donations. So I'm technically too old to be an egg donor, but I'm not too old to be a surrogate. And so that's another factor into it too.
Kiki, anything to add?
It is a lot more strict on the regulations for egg donation just because of the genetics. And I personally would have loved to do it, but I wasn't qualified to do egg donation because of my own genetics, but I was qualified to be a surrogate. So really, I was just wanting to help in any way that I could. I would have loved to have donated my eggs. I would have done it as many times, just like surrogacy. I would have carried as many kids as I could. But there is a limit on how much you can do, just like any other regulations. So it is very different just because it's your own genetic makeup. Surrogacy, it's gestational surrogacy. So we're not genetically related. It doesn't have anything to do with our genetics. There is a lot of differences.
Is there any situation for which you would not be a surrogate? Any particular person's situation that you would say, I'm not comfortable with that?
Like me as a surrogate?
Yeah, if they came to like this person's in this particular situation and said, we want you to be our surrogate, is there anybody's you could think of, a situation you can think of where you'd say, I don't feel like being a surrogate for that?
As a surrogate, you do get a say in who you're matching with for as far as intended parents. So if, for like religious or belief reasons, if you don't want to do a same-sex couple, then you can choose to stick with traditional. You can choose to stay as like a domestic here in the US, intended parents versus international. You really do have a say in what you're wanting. There are lots of different aspects we cover as far as what you're looking for through the pregnancy and afterwards, and just how well you guys mesh with your beliefs, because we don't want two people with two different stances matched together, and then they're pregnant and they come up with a circumstance that happens and they're on two different pages. So for me, myself, I'm pretty open to who I'd be a surrogate for. Obviously, some people are easier than others, a little bit more relaxed. But if you are mentally like capable of being a parent, and it's why shouldn't you get the opportunity to be a parent? So
okay. How about this question? How often do people make unsolicited, unkind comments, and how does she cope or respond to it?
I don't get many unkind or unsolicited comments. The only one that really bothers me is like, well, how much are you getting paid for that? Or, well, you must be making some money, right? And it's like, well, I don't go asking you how much you make at your job, you know? But that's just how I am as a person. You know, you don't ask people how much money they make, and they don't ask you how much money you make. But I don't think I've gotten any, me personally, I haven't gotten any nasty comments. I do try to just leave it very basic. I don't give details about, you know, what the couple is like that I'm working with, or stuff like that. But Kiki, have you had any?
I did, and mainly it was just based on the lifestyle for the intended parents that I chose to carry for, and that they didn't agree with it, and so they just had a lot to say, like, well, they should never be a parent, and that's not for them to decide. This parent that I was caring for really wanted to be a parent, and that's all I cared about. And I felt like there was this big connection with them, and it was my decision to care for them, not anybody else's. So it was just sloughing off these comments, and like, you don't know their situation, you don't know them, so you should not be able to judge.
Does she have any of her own children? If so, what is their reaction to the surrogacy process?
So yeah, I do have 2 children, as we've said. When I first did my my first journey, as what we call them, is a journey, and my children were obviously a few years younger, and I was just pretty straightforward with them. I did wait until I was towards the end of my first trimester, but I was just like, oh, you know, we had these friends, and they had talked to the intended parents multiple times and seen pictures, and we've had conversations and video chats, and so they knew who they were. And I was just like, you know, mommy had a baby put in her tummy to carry a baby for them because they can't have a baby. And they're just like, okay. And they're still the same way this time. I mean, they honestly, they don't really care all that much. My daughter does, you know, want a younger sibling, but I keep telling her that's not going to happen.
She can babysit for me.
They hug my belly, they kiss my belly, they like to feel the baby kick. They understand that the baby's for somebody else, and it's actually what they're used to seeing. We don't really have a huge social circle around us, and so when we do encounter like someone we know that's pregnant, they're like, well, who's the baby for? And they're like, well, this is my baby. And they're like, oh, okay. But for them, it's just, you know, another aspect of life.
Yep.
Okay. If she hasn't already answered by the time we get to these questions, which I don't think you have, how many types of surrogacy are there?
Kiki, do you know more on that one?
So there's traditional surrogacy and gestational surrogacy. Traditional surrogacy is not the traditional way anymore, but that was where it was, maybe you just implant the sperm, and then it's genetically related to the surrogate, and you're using your egg, and hopefully that sperm fertilizes and you make a baby. The more traditional way is gestational surrogacy, where the embryo is already created, and then that embryo is implanted, and there's no genetic relation to the surrogate mom. There's also altruistic surrogacy and compensated surrogacy, whether you're being compensated or just doing it from the goodness of your heart, because there's a lot of people that do that. I think that's all the types.
Okay. Do you feel differently if an embryo is implanted versus if sperm is implanted into the surrogate's egg? Do you think there may be some attachment if the baby is biologically the surrogate's? I don't have a problem with surrogates for couples that can't conceive. It's a commitment for the surrogate, so compensation is okay with me. By the way, now uterus transplants are being done. Okay, so I guess the questions, we kind of talked about this, egg donation basically versus, right? Is that kind of what you're hearing from this person as well? Like, is there a difference basically in egg donation versus being a surrogate where it's not your genetic material? We kind of talked about that, but you both are saying you didn't really have any, you were happy to hand off the kid. You weren't like, I carried you for 9 months and I want you back.
We feel more like the aunt going through it.
The
So
aunt.
we're taking care of this baby, doing the extreme babysitting, and then we get to go home and sleep, and they get to wake up with the newborn every few hours.
What is sleep? I don't know what you're talking about. I must not be a surrogate. Because
I feel like that question was asking more about the genetic relation, more towards traditional surrogacy, and that's not a norm anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Well, which would essentially make you an egg donor because you're donating an egg, right? You're donating your genetic material. I mean, it is your egg. You're not giving it up, but it's, you're donating your genetic material essentially to somebody. So kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we asked that question. Okay, Kenny, in the adoption process, the birth mom can make an agreement with the adoptive parents to still keep in contact with the child. This might be helpful in situations where the surrogate mom is having second thoughts. Is there anything like this in the world of surrogacy?
Well, there isn't necessarily like the opportunity to keep the child. You have to sign contracts that state all kinds of different factors as far as if the parents were to die, who the baby would go to, that you have no legal rights to the child, you have no say in anything for the child. All decisions regarding the healthcare of the child are purely, the parents' decisions. The surrogate has no say in it. But as far as, I'm sorry, I'm having pregnancy brain. What was the rest of that question?
The question was here. Make an agreement with the adoptive parents to still keep in contact.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So most people do want a relationship out of it. The parents are very, very grateful that we are doing this for them and bringing a child into the world for them. And most of them do want to have a relationship afterwards. Sometimes it might just be a few, check-ins every, couple times a year. Obviously at first it's very much, like every week or every month or a lot more frequent you get pictures. But then there's people who don't want the relationship. They're not looking for keeping as much contact and that kind of a situation. And that's part of the matching process when we're screening the intended parents and the surrogates and we're matching them together, is to make sure that they're both looking for the same thing during this whole process and that they're both going to be happy along the way and afterwards.
Okay. A related topic is the advancement of artificial wombs. Very soon, a fertilized egg will be viable outside the womb. What impact will this have on abortion? Or we could ask, what impact would it have on surrogacy? As most people believe that abortion should not be legal when a baby is viable outside the womb. We will be able to save even the smallest child at that point. Not sure if you have any thoughts on that, but it seems like it would also affect surrogacy too. What do you guys think about artificial wombs? It totally freaks me out. It freaks me out, man. I'm glad I'll probably be dead by the time this becomes like a regular thing.
I don't know much about artificial wombs. But I mean, I don't even know what to say to that, to be honest.
They might put you out of business, I guess. You're going to have to figure out how to run the factory of wombs, I guess, instead of, have you seen pictures? It's crazy. Some of the pictures, I don't know. I'm guessing they're just made, they're made, they're fake pictures. It's not like we have this, but it looks like Star Wars, it's crazy. It's really, it's mind blowing to see. And yeah, they're right. It may end up being a thing. Oh God, it's so freaky. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. But do you guys have any more thoughts on it?
I think that might be where modern medicine takes us, but I don't know what impact that will have with surrogacy. I just think that it's going to be dependent on what kind of relationship you want coming out of this. If you want somebody to share it with and have a surrogate and be able to get these actual updates and how they're feeling and what this baby is doing, instead of just maybe checking it out on a video every now and then. I don't know how that
I don't think I'd
connection
trust.
is.
If it was me, I don't think I would trust a robot. I don't know. I think I would. Just because that's just who I am. You know, I don't eat GMO food, so I don't think I'd do like the GMO uterus. I think I would want like a real human being if I was gonna, you know. I just don't think I'd do the artificial. I don't like artificial sweetener. I like honey. You know, I'm going for the real uterus. That's just me. I don't know. It would freak me out. I feel like they missed something. You know, oh man, we forgot to add this one valve. You know, we just forgot to add this one valve. We didn't realize that was so important. You know, your kid comes out with like 8 arms. Oh shoot, we put you in the wrong one. We put you in the spider uterus where we were trying to make spiders. All right. Final question, I think over here. Isn't this another my body, my choice situation? Has Sweden banned abortion too? This is talking about the surrogacy ban in Sweden. Has Sweden banned abortion too? You can end a life, but you want to give life, you can't. I think that's an interesting question. What do you think about that?
I do feel like obviously if it is our body and our choice, to a point, obviously you have to be healthy enough to carry a child. You have to be mentally capable of doing this whole process, to even, you know, be considered. But if you're not being forced to do it, I just don't see how it's being like a crime or being taken advantage of, as long as there's like proper, you know, laws or regulations regarding it. It just doesn't seem, I don't know, like it should be an issue.
Mm-hmm. Kiki, anything on your end? No?
Agreed. Yes. My choice, sure, but nobody's being forced into this. And you're talking about all of these issues and what ifs. If it should happen during your journey, then those things have already been discussed and you have a say. So I don't really think that my body, my choice is an issue, because you're still in control.
No, I think what the person's saying is it hypocritical of Sweden to say you can have control over your body when it comes to ending a life, but you can't have control over your body when it comes to birthing a life? So they're being hypocritical. That's what that person's getting at, I think.
In a way, I can see how it'd be hypocritical, but at the same time, they're not saying, no, you can't have children, period. So it might be like other reasons regarding it, why it's banned, but it's just like with Washington State saying, oh, you can only do, you know, about 3 surrogacies. It's like, so if I was going to have kids of my own, I could have 17 children of my own, but I can only have 3 kids for somebody else.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a similar situation is, you know,
and how do they come up with 3?
Period.
Why 3? So, how do they come up with 3? I mean, what's up with that number?
That's our estimated number. The law in Washington states that you cannot enter into a contract if you have already entered into a contract more than 2 times, resulting in a live birth. So it's very vague. So a lot of times it's perceived as 3. I don't know why 3. But
what if you had a 4th? Would they put you in jail? I mean, what's the penalty for having a 4th surrogacy?
I don't think you'd be able to get an attorney to sign your contracts. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And then no parent is going to do that without a contract, because they're like, well, who's to say you're not going to up and leave with my kid?
Mm-hmm. I can see how this gets done under the table, though, sometimes. Like, or I guess I could see how this would incentivize doing things under the table. Like, I pay my babysitter cash, and she makes a pretty good wage for a 20-year-old because she doesn't really pay taxes. Oh, God, I probably shouldn't have said that on my podcast. They're going to come after her now. But you know what I mean? I can see how this is. All right, let me go to some of the other questions in the live stream, and then I'm going to let you ladies go. What is the age cutoff for a surrogate?
Usually it's about 40 to 41. It depends on the clinic that you're working with, but usually it's about 40.
Okay. Is Paul Anna's song "Having My Baby" your theme song? I've never heard that song.
Me neither.
I don't know that song.
I'm going to look it up
We'll have to
though.
we'll have to go look that up. How would you handle the fact that a couple split up during your term?
That's actually in the contracts, and they both still have the legal rights to the child. They would have to go through the custody, who would get custody and how that's shared between the two of them. I mean, it happens in everyday life, unfortunately, but sometimes I guess it's for the best, but it does happen. We had an intended parent who had that with their last surrogacy where, I believe they were in the middle of their journey and they decided to get a divorce, and they just went through the process of regular court proceedings as far as who was going to have custodial rights over the child.
Okay. I think there's one. Let's see here. Yet another shot from Pearl Jam's Do the Evolution. We all agreed late 90s, not the way to go. Oh, it's another song, I think. Okay. So 2 song recommendations for you two. I think you basically talked about one particular case, but is there generally in the contract, you just decide how it will be resolved? Is that something that parents have to put in the contract before they get a surrogate? Like what would happen if you went separate ways? Does everybody have to discuss that ahead of time?
We don't really have a say in any of that, but there is, like, in the contracts, it does state, if the parents were to die during the process, who would be the legal guardian of the child. If the parents were to split, they still have legal rights to the child. The surrogate has no claim to the baby. And so it's all like a standard of contracts when it comes to surrogacy, just basically stating under all these different circumstances, a surrogate has no right to claim the child as their own, to be a custodian, not a custodian, but a guardian of the child or anything like that. So,
okay. I know I'm late to the game, but what about the child's life? What about what they have to deal with when they grow up? I mean, obviously that depends on the situation. I think we'll probably need a little bit more explanation about what do you mean Gideon Hawk by that? Because I think maybe to re-clarify, I think a lot of people are still kind of confusing, like egg donation, like it's your baby. Because there was somebody on Rumble too who said the same thing about here we go, a baby needs their biological mother and father, which honestly I agree with. My preference is that a baby be with their biological mother and father. I understand, like in the case of adoption, you're doing the best you can with a situation for the kid that may be in a really unhealthy environment. I'm queasy about the idea of like creating genetics and then the kid doesn't have their biological mom and dad. I'll just be honest. That's one of my biases on this one. So in that particular case, I guess, what do you think about that? Do you think, do you have any thoughts on like a kid? Okay, I was created for these parents by these other people, and now I don't have my biological mom and dad. Do you not think maybe that's as much an issue like somebody like me thinks it is? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
They are usually biologically related to their parents. Very rarely are they not biologically related. Sometimes, if a friend has extra like embryos, they will donate their embryos to a friend who's going through the IVF process and can't create new ones. But most of the time, these children are living and being raised with their biological parents.
Interesting. Okay. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you all think you want to clarify or you find interesting about it that people don't know that we didn't talk about? I didn't ask you.
I don't think so.
I'm just seeing this. I'm not sure. Biological mother. How about cesarean then? Anesthetics during birth that steals chemicals bonding to a newborn too. Do we take those into account? I think it's wonderful that you are willing to help parents this way, Brisbane says. It's a fascinating topic. I really appreciate that you all were willing to come on and talk about it. I feel like I come up with 100 more questions, but I'm going to let you go because as we're talking about motherhood and kids, I got to go take care of mine. We're going to Florida tomorrow. Woo! But you know what that means? I am got to get 2 kids ready to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Give them the contact info. What is that? I don't. Here we go. Hang on. Here was the explanation. I don't even agree with IVF and the making of eggs. Sometimes people who can't have kids just shouldn't try to make kids by other ways. Adoption is fine. Many living kids who need parents. Okay, that was the clarification from the what about the parents or the kids' lives. And then give them the contact info. I have no idea what that means. Okay, so I think we're good. I think we're good. Yeah, it's it's one of those things that I think like from a moral, philosophical, theological, social perspective, I would find it fascinating to sit through like a year-long course on something like this. It's really interesting. Brings up for somebody like me who just wants to sit back and just hear everybody out and then make my decision. I've learned a lot from you all. I really appreciate your taking the time and fielding some of the criticisms too, as well as the questions. I don't have anything else. I think we're good. Anybody else? No, I don't hear my producers, so I think we're good to go. And Bree, when are you due?
I am due April 29th.
Okay, coming up.
Yeah.
Coming up. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you from Florida on Friday with the Texas boys. We're going to be talking about cottage industries, how to have a cottage industry, because I'm thinking about selling chocolate that I make with honey and not sugar. So it's good for you, or at least they tell me. It's coconut oil. So it feels like really what you're eating is coconut oil. It just tastes good. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.